This episode contains discussion of sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised.
On February 26, 2016, Terry Sanderson was skiing at Deer Valley Resort in Park City, Utah. That same day, Gwyneth Paltrow, her significant other, and their children were also skiing there. Just before noon, Terry and Gwyneth collided on the hill. 3 years later, Terry Sanderson filed a lawsuit against the actor turned lifestyle influencer for $300,000 in damages. Gwyneth Paltrow countersued for $1. The case went to trial in 2023 to determine who was at fault for their ski hill collision.
Oh, man.
Oh, geez.
I have so much to say about this. This whole trial is on YouTube, and it is gold. But first, we want to give a hey girl thanks to Beth for writing this one up.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Tyrella for requesting it.
Yeah, because I couldn't shut up about it. So we're going to start with telling you a little bit about Park City, Utah, of course.
Duh.
It sits in the Wasatch Mountains. Wasatch? I don't know. And is a place known around the world as a destination for outdoor adventures. It's a city with mountain charm where you can ski, snowboard, hike, mountain bike, fish, or golf. Park City, Utah, not my place.
None of those things appeal to you, huh?
None of those things, no. The main attraction, though, and source of revenue is skiing, and most everyone in the city has a job that revolves around skiing. And also in this trial, all of the jurors were well-versed skiers. I mean, because they live there, right? Everybody knows about it. Park City is also home to the Sundance Film Festival that occurs every year in late January, and Sundance is the largest independent film festival in the United States, as well as one of the largest in the world. And if you're like Tori, you'll also know that Park City is home to some of the women from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And Lisa Barlow, is she one of the housewives?
Oh, yes, she is.
Oh, okay. Is a big part of Sundance.
Yes, she is. She talks a lot about that. If you watch one episode with her in it, you'll know that.
With Sundance? What does that mean?
I don't really know. She puts on events after parties for Sundance and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So as far as I can tell, I'm not all that sure. But
I gotcha. There's also tons of restaurants in the area, lots of stuff to do, right? But like we said, Park City is known for skiing, right? And one of the most exclusive ski resorts in Park City is the Deer Valley Ski Resort. And this is where the event takes place. So just for reference, for a day pass in April of 2024 for an adult, it would cost anywhere from $169 to $209, which is, from what I understand, fairly average. When we went skiing in Vermont, it was $180, maybe something like that.
Yeah, for a day pass to get yep.
Yeah. Private ski lessons range from $220 to $240, depending on which part of the season you're in. And that's for an hour-long introduction lesson to skiing. But you can also do longer private lessons, and then you can do full-day private lessons, which range from $1,250 to $1,470. And at the time of the ski crash, Gwyneth Paltrow was at the resort with her boyfriend, Brad Falchuk, who she's now married to, her 2 children, his 2 children. The point of this trip was for them to see if their families could blend well, which obviously they did because now they're married. And she paid about $9,000 for ski lessons just for her 2 kids that day. Or that week, maybe. Maybe It was for the whole time that they were there.
I thought they said it was for 2 days.
Okay, yeah, it may have been. I can't remember how many days. I do know she lost a half a day of skiing for this, okay?
Yeah.
She lost a half a day of skiing.
That's a lot of money.
I'm sure it is, yeah. But it was funny because on the stand when they were pulling up, her invoice for the ski lessons, they're like, okay, and this is yours, $9,000 for ski lessons. And she's like, it's what they charge. Yeah,
she didn't come up with that number.
Yeah, and obviously she's got the funds for it. But all that to say, it's a very exclusive and elite ski resort. Not just anybody is going to be there. If you're there, you've got means of some sort, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily spending the type of money that Gwyneth is spending, but you be spending some money there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is part of the case relevant to it.
So Terry Sanderson and Gwyneth Paltrow were skiing at the Deer Valley Resort on February 26, 2016. They were on a beginner's course called the Bandana Run on the slopes of Flagstaff Mountain. At about 11:55 a.m., Gwyneth, and I love that Beth said, can we call her Gwyneth? I want to only say Gwyneth Paltrow because I don't feel comfortable just saying Gwyneth, but Gwyneth and Terry collided. After the collision, both parties dealt with some form of injury in the aftermath, but nothing more was said or came of the collision outside of their personal lives, and that is until 2019, when Terry Sanderson sued Gwyneth Paltrow for the injuries he sustained 3 years after the collision for just over $300,000. Even though, so the initial filing was for $3.1 million, but...
He initially tried to sue for what he called a ski and run. So essentially like a hit and run, yeah, but obviously on skis. And so I guess that's a more, I guess it's more serious, like if you do a hit and run with your car, like you're leaving the scene of an accident or whatever. Right. So that's what he tried to sue her for, because he was saying, and he says it in this trial too, that she hit him and then she just skied her ass away. Mm-hmm. And nobody came to check on him. He was also suing Deer Valley Resort and Eric Christensen specifically, who was Gwyneth's kid's ski instructor, for leaving him there unconscious, he said, not checking on him, none of that. Now, the judge dismissed that one because none of that was the case. It was not a ski and run or anything. So that's when he revised it, came back with just damages for $300,000.
You know what I think? I think we need to change the way that this episode is going, and I think you need to tell me the case, because you are so well versed in it.
I know everything about it.
I know. I don't know everything. I'm not on your level with it.
I can totally do that. I don't want to take anything from you, though.
I mean, I'll chime in with some witty little quips, you know.
Okay, so when asked why now he was suing, Terry claimed it was because he couldn't reach an agreement with her lawyers, and then Gwyneth Paltrow countersued for $1 as well as her legal expenses to be reimbursed. And she stated that the lawsuit was a, quote, meritless claim as well as, quote, an attempt to exploit her celebrity and wealth. And she insisted that she remembered the incident, quote, very clearly. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Terry Sanderson. Terry Sanderson is a retired optometrist who had been skiing for 30 years at the time of the accident. He was born on June 24th, 1946 in Fairview, Montana. He studied optometry at North Montana College and later received his bachelor degree of arts in zoology with pre-med options at the University of Montana and a Doctor of Optometry Vision Care degree from Pacific University. After finishing his studies, he served as a captain in the United States Army for 3 years. After being in the military, he established his own private practice in Soda Springs, Idaho as an optometrist. He was also a private practice consultant where he helped healthcare practices with their business strategies, financial management, operational efficiency, compliance, and risk management. This is a smart man. He's a smart man. He's well-educated, presumably very good at what he does. I mean, he had a private practice where he made enough money that he's skiing with the likes of Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean,
yeah, he seems very well established and very successful.
He married, I'm going to say Tana Cushman. They never say her name in the trial, so I don't know, on June 14th, 1970. And then they ended up having 3 daughters together, Shay, Polly, with Jenny being the youngest. Terry and Tana eventually divorced, and at the time of the accident, Terry was in a relationship with a woman named Carlene Davidson, and she did testify at the trial. But about 6 months after the accident and before the trial, they broke up. Gwyneth Paltrow, so Gwyneth Kate Paltrow Falchuk.
Wow.
And she had to spell all of that because, they're like, say your name and spell it. Like, it was so much spelling. Also, one interesting thing when I was watching a recap of the trial. Okay, so I watched a lot of the trial and then I fucking watched recaps of it because of who I am as a person.
Obsessed, yeah. You love trial.
I love, yeah. So, like, there are these lawyers that will go back and, like, and it's so interesting because they will break down, like, what's happening and what. I think it's really interesting. So, anyway, this guy, I think his channel name is, like, Runkle of the Bailey. I'm not sure why. I know his first name is Ian. I don't follow him enough to know any
I think I've seen him, though.
Yeah, he's, like, got long hair, and he's a criminal defense lawyer, and then he talks a lot with...
Gray hair?
Yes. I found him through the Law and Lumber channel, and that guy's name is Rob, I think. He caught this, though. So when Gwyneth was spelling her name, when she was spelling Paltrow, whoever did the closed captions for the trial literally put cater tot 87 or something like that. It was cater tot something, whatever. And he was like, what the fuck, closed caption people? Like, what is, like, he was like, maybe somebody was trying to log into their bank while they were working or whatever and accidentally typed their password into, because he was like, what the fuck is cater tot? Like, it was so funny. So anyway, Gwyneth Cater Tot Paltrow was born on September 7th, 1972 in Los Angeles, California. I think everybody knows her mom was Blythe Danner. Is she still alive, right?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Surely. Okay. Her dad is Bruce Paltrow, a film producer and director. She has a younger brother named Jake, who's a film director and screenwriter. Never heard of her. I did not know she had a brother. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow is an American actress who began her career in the movie High in 1989, and it was a TV film that her father directed. After that, she was cast in a musical, more made-for-TV films, and then in 1995, she played, who we all know her from, the wife of Brad Pitt in Seven.
What's in the box?
It's her. Ugh. She's in the box.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Her severed head.
Yep. And then her career only took off from there. We all know her movie credentials, right?
Yeah.
After several more years of acting, Gwyneth announced in 2017 she was going to take a break from acting and focus on her business, Goop. She played a few roles since then, but mainly she's just doing like her business and her family. Goop was founded in 2008 in Gwyneth's kitchen as a homespun weekly newsletter. I have such a hard time saying homespun and Gwyneth Paltrow in the same sentence because
it's so out of touch for
my gosh. Yeah. And that's according to the Goop website. The website states, quote, "We operate from a place of curiosity and non-judgment. We start hard conversations, crack open taboos, and look for connection and resonance everywhere we can find it. We don't mind being the tip of the spear. In short, we go first so you don't have to." Isn't it a beauty and wellness website? Like,
I thought so.
You can discuss and shop beauty products, skincare, fashion, wellness products they make themselves, and there's even a sex shop. There's also the Goop podcast, shared recipes and travel tips, and there are also brick and mortar stores. I did not know this in LA, Montecito, Sag Harbor, and Monalani. And everything there is expensive as you may well know.
Like the tank top, a knitted tank top for like $825.
Yeah, I mean, this is a woman who, during the trial, one day wore a gaudy gold. I don't want to say gaudy. It was big. It was like a real chunky gold necklace that was $65,000. Yeah. And apparently the sex toys on there are expensive as fuck.
I believe it. I mean, I don't think that they would have a clearance section on their website.
Yeah. In 2002, Gwyneth met Chris Martin from Coldplay, and they began a relationship. They ended up marrying in December of 2003. At the time of their wedding, she was pregnant with the couple's first child, so that's Apple, who was born in 2004. And then in 2006, their son Moses was born, and in 2014, the couple announced their divorce, which nobody will ever forget because it was a conscious uncoupling and it was a whole thing. Later that year, she started dating Brad Paltrow, a producer who she met on the set of Glee in 2010 and went public with their relationship in 2015.
Take from that what you will, I think.
I don't know. The two announced their engagement in January 2018. They were married on September 29th of that year. Now, in 2013, Gwyneth was voted Hollywood's most hated celebrity in the world by Star Magazine, and also at the same time was voted the world's most beautiful woman by People Magazine.
Two things can be true at the same time, though.
Sure. I think she's somebody that people love to hate.
She's polarizing.
Very. And she's just gotten more and more out of touch over the years, you know, and that doesn't help her case.
That's why I don't hate her, but that's why I'm like, oh God, like if I roll my eyes when somebody brings up Gwyneth Paltrow, it's because of Goop, I think, as a whole.
Yes, Goop did not help her persona. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and that was, I mean, obviously people like to watch celebrity trials, especially, you know, you kind of get to see a little bit more.
The only one that I've ever really watched was Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. I mean, like, I'm guilty of that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I expected her to come across much worse than she did, just based on, you know, just kind of all of that. I thought overall she really came across very gracious, and I thought it was a good look for her, the way that she handled everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, in January of 2019, when Terry filed that lawsuit, remember he started out in $3.1 million. And so he was, again, suing Gwyneth Paltrow, but also members of the resort. He said his claim was that Gwyneth Paltrow skied out of control, hit him in the back while he was the downhill skier. That's going to be very important. Who was downhill? Because the downhill person...
rules of skiing like this, yes.
Yeah, the person who is down... Like, if you are uphill, it is your responsibility to look below you and make sure that you're not hitting
Gonna ski into somebody, yeah.
Yeah. So he states that she knocked him down hard. He was knocked out, and this caused a brain injury and 4 broken ribs, among some other serious injuries. He said then she gets up, she skis away. He's seriously injured, laying in the snow, can't do anything for himself, presumably, because he's so injured. And that nobody, he said Eric Christensen skied over to him, saw him on the ground, and then was like, "You did this," and yelled at him. And then again, just like skied away. That he never sent help, which he's obligated to do because he works for the resort. And then later filed a false report to protect Gwyneth Paltrow because he's like her staff, essentially. So we'll get into that. The lawsuit states that neither Gwyneth Paltrow nor the resort's employees notified emergency responders about his injuries. That's categorically just untrue, but we'll go into that. He claimed that these negligent actions caused additional emotional distress to his injuries. In February of 2019, that complaint was amended, again, because the judge found these things to be not true. So he said, you can't file for this. So he amended it from 3.1 mil to 300,000. And then a month after the original lawsuit was filed, Gwyneth countersued for that $1 of symbolic damages. The trial began on March 21st, 2023 in Park City, Utah. Judge Kent Holmberg approved cameras being allowed in the courtroom, and the trial was live streamed. The trial was to determine who hit whom, did they in fact cause damages, what were those damages, and then who was uphill, who was downhill. Stephen Owens represented Gwyneth Paltrow in this trial. Even if you don't watch the whole thing, which I did, so you don't have to, I guess, but
you're like Goop.
Oh my God.
You do things so we don't have to.
I'm like spearheading.
Yes.
Your life, really. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean. And I am very thankful for it.
I'm brave.
Yes, you are.
Honestly.
You're a trailblazer is what you are.
Wow. Okay. Even if you don't watch all of it, please watch just some of the highlights. I bet they're on TikTok from some of the things that these lawyers said. Yikes. But anyway. So, all right, first we're going to go through Terry Sanderson's side of the story. He's the plaintiff in the case. His case goes first, right? Lawrence Bueller began his opening statement on behalf of Terry by saying that Gwyneth Paltrow wasn't looking in front of her when she was skiing downhill because she was looking at her children. They allege that her kids were like, "Mom, look at me. Mom, look at me. Mom, look at me." And so she's like looking and continuing to ski, which I don't even know. Is anybody comfortable enough doing that? Like, maybe you are, but like, that would scare the shit out of me. He says the only eyewitness to the crash was Terry's friend, Craig Ramone. Craig Ramone was the first witness to testify for the plaintiff, and he said he was in a group. It was like a meetup group that they were in, and so they all went skiing together. And he said Terry is skiing down the run when he heard a scream. Craig heard a scream. Then he says he looks over and he saw that a skier had run into the back of Terry. And then he stated that Paltrow had hit Terry hard and then bounced off of him. And when he reached the pair on the ground, Paltrow got up. They asked, did she ask if anybody was okay? He's like, no. Did she check on anybody? No. Did she give you any information? No. Did she ask any information? No. She just skied the fuck away. Didn't ask any questions, nothing. He also testified that an instructor came over to the group and yelled at Terry, who he says was face down in the snow.
This would have been Eric Christensen.
Yes. Terry's testimony says he's face up in the snow, by the way. Just according to Ramone, Paltrow left the scene approximately 3 or 4 minutes after the crash without stating who she was, asking if anybody needed help, and he said that Terry was really out of it and was complaining about his ribs, and the ski instructor then, quote, yanked Terry off the ground and then left per his testimony. I just need you to know that Craig Ramone's story has changed many, many times from I saw it, to in the trial, Well, I heard the scream and then I looked. I didn't actually see it happen. And the testimony changes from Terry being knocked out for a few seconds to Terry being knocked out for a couple minutes. Terry has told people up to 10 minutes that he was unconscious.
I heard also it's just a couple, like you said, couple seconds, but that's a big fat difference there. Like,
Well, and also if Terry's giving this story about this is what happened directly after I was on the ground, nobody came over to check on me. Eric Christensen was yelling at me. If you're out for 5 minutes, you don't know that.
Right.
If you're out for 10 minutes, you don't know that. If you're out for seconds, maybe you do, but Terry's daughter, Polly, testified that she and her father that her father used to be a goer, but now is easily frustrated and struggles cognitively. She stated that he now gets caught up on details and he can't see the forest for the trees. Terry's youngest daughter, Jenny, did not testify at trial, but it was stated in her deposition that she had a really, really troubled relationship with her father. And she used words to describe him as domineering, controlling. I mean, they didn't talk for 13 years. When Polly was asked about that on the stand, she said that wasn't true. It seems to be an accepted fact that Jenny didn't speak to him for 13 years.
Right.
And that they've always had a troubled relationship. And they asked his other daughter about this too, Shay. She got reprimanded by the judge because she so Jenny is the only daughter. There's 3 daughters. Jenny's the only daughter that is saying stuff like that Terry was difficult always, that Terry was domineering always, that Terry was, I don't know, I'm just going to say it. I feel bad for Terry. I think there's a lot that's going on. And at the time of this trial, he was 76 years old. He's obviously older, very active for being 76. It sounds like he's a difficult person to get along with and always has been. I mean, there's a lot of testimony that points to that. When Shay talks about Jenny, because obviously the defense is going to say, because their whole thing with the trial is he was this charming, happy-go-lucky person who was like uplifting and all these things. And then he gets in this ski accident where Gwyneth Paltrow hits him and his whole personality has changed and everything's different about him and he's angry now and he can't go anywhere. He described himself as a self-imposed recluse. He wasn't leaving the house anymore. He wasn't doing the things he used to enjoy. He couldn't do anything anymore, like all these things. And they're saying it's night and day difference, right? Well, Jenny's saying, no, he was always difficult. He was always cranky. He was always this way. So Shay, when being asked questions about that, was calling Jenny, I don't know that she used neurodivergent, but something to that effect, and then started saying, almost giving like a diagnosis of Jenny, like a mental health diagnosis of Jenny. And so when they would say, well, but they had a difficult relationship, right? Like these things happen and Jenny said this or that. And she's like, yeah, but somebody who has, whatever it is that she said, somebody who thinks and believes the way that Jenny does, somebody who is as broken as Jenny is, blah, blah, blah. And so the judge was like, it was so funny. He was like, hang on a second. He's like, listen, we're going to have a lot of medical experts testify in this trial. You are not one of them. You may only testify to what you have personally observed. You are not going to diagnose Jenny with any type of mental health issue, right?
Good for him.
Yeah. Obviously, this is her dad. Obviously, they have a vested interest in him winning this trial for lots of reasons. Could be financially motivated. Also just could be like they want him to win. It's their dad, whatever. They're trying to support him. I understand that. There's also a really difficult family dynamic because there's a lot of family troubles. And there were a lot of questions that were asked that did alienate Polly and Shay from either their dad or Jenny, right? If you answer it one way, you're supporting their dad. If you answer it the other way, you're supporting Jenny and you're alienating the other one. That's a difficult place to be. It felt like a reach, the way that they were talking about Jenny, to make it sound like Jenny was the problem and that Terry was always easy to get along with and all this stuff, when there's plenty of testimony that he wasn't.
Right.
And there's plenty of evidence that he wasn't. So I did not think that was fair. Carlene Davidson, Terry's ex-girlfriend, was quite upset that they used Terry's daughters against him or attempted to at trial. She was interviewed in the Gwyneth versus Terry, the ski crash trial documentary, and said that when Terry arrived home after the accident, he told her that he'd been hit on the hill. He did not say it was Gwyneth Paltrow. She also said, or testified at trial, that Terry became like an old man after the collision. Prior to this accident, he was very easygoing. He liked people. He was very kind. These are her words. He traveled, he volunteered, he attended many events, and he spent time with her family and she with his family. She was asked if she skied, and she said she couldn't because she'd had a knee injury, but it was Terry's favorite winter activity. The day of the accident, she said he looked like a truck had hit him. He was disheveled. He looked like he didn't feel well, and I'm sure he didn't. He had 4 broken ribs. She testified he didn't really want to talk about what had happened and he was cranky. She tried to encourage him to go to the doctor because he knew his ribs were broken, but he refused to go until the next day. And she said that after the accident, he no longer wanted to do anything. His joy was gone. He was less energetic, less connected. And then he eventually pushed her away and they broke up. And he testifies on the stand that because Kristen Van Orman, one of his attorneys, is like, Carlene's a catch. Why'd you let her go? And he's like, well, and he gets emotional about it. And he's like, I just told her, like, you got to get out of here. You got to run. Like, leave me. I can't do anything anymore. I don't want to hold you back. Get out of here, And this is about 6 months after the accident that they break up. When questioned by the defense, she stated that it is possible that Terry hid medical conditions from her prior to the accident. Not necessarily on purpose, but it was possible. Shay also testified to that too, that I don't know, because there were things that the defense asked, and they're like, did you know about this? If his medical record says this, do you dispute it? And she's like, well, no, I don't dispute it. I haven't seen all of his medical records. He was a really private man. There's plenty of stuff he didn't tell us. 3 weeks prior to the accident, he went to his doctor, and in the medical record, it says that he's telling his doctor, I feel like I can't do the things I used to do anymore. I'm all of a sudden feeling like an old man, like I'm feeling my age much more than I was. I'm having trouble. At least months and weeks before the accident, he was seeking help for anger management with his doctor. He said he was having trouble with anger and angry outbursts. He was in his 70s at that point. How much of this is natural cognitive decline and how much of this is the skiing, that's a question you have to ask.
I don't think that it would be fair at all to put it all on just this accident because
especially when you've got medical records. It's not like the defense brought up like, well, I think he said one time to somebody else, I'm starting to feel old or whatever. This is like stuff he is in his medical record. Mm-hmm. He apparently had prostate cancer before. He had osteoarthritis. He had just there are other things at play here. She testified that the only thing she knew about what happened was that Terry had lost consciousness, and all she knew of the accident was from what Craig Ramon had said. Terry's attorneys also had some medical professionals testify in regard to Terry's medical condition after the accident. Dr. Alina Fong treated Terry following the collision. Terry first went to Dr. Fong in 2017, and she stated that he was desperate to get better. She testified that he did have a concussion after the crash, and it resulted in an MTBI, traumatic brain injury. His MRI results, according to Dr. Fong, showed a definite abnormality in the way Terry's brain was firing. She explained on the stand that Terry's concussion caused ongoing problems, such as having issues with cognitive functions. According to the Mayo Clinic's website, a traumatic brain injury is the result from a violent blow or jolt to the head or body. If an object goes through the brain tissue, like a bullet or shattered piece of skull, traumatic brain injury can also be caused. A mild TBI can affect brain cells temporarily, and more serious TBIs can result in bruising, torn tissues, bleeding, and/or other physical damage to the brain. And these injuries can result in long-term complications or death. And I have definitely heard that behavioral changes, especially being like anger and stuff like that, is something that's associated with that. As Dr. Fong continued with her testimony, she stated that she found no evidence that Terry was faking his symptoms and that he was an ideal patient, which I don't think anybody ever questioned that he was having these symptoms. Like
Gwyneth, we'll find out. I mean, we'll talk about it, but like she was very, very empathetic. about his medical issues, so.
She was, yeah. Dr. Fong said Terry was an intelligent man that didn't want to be injured, and he was willing to do whatever it took to change where he was at. She testified that she encouraged Terry to get back to doing the things that he loved, like traveling. However, she did advise that he didn't travel alone because he had issues with both his memory and some issues with problem solving. And that will come back, so just put a pin in that. Then they called Dr. Wendell Gibby, a neuroradiologist specialist who did an analysis of Terry's x-rays. He testified that it was very unlikely that his injuries could have been caused by him running into Gwyneth Paltrow. He said the x-rays showed that his injuries were consistent with the statement that Gwyneth hit Terry in the back at a high-speed impact. I don't really know how you'd look at an x-ray and be like, it had to be from behind and not front.
Right. I have no idea. It's not a bullet wound where you can do trajectory and things like that. And,
right. Yeah. It's just, this was a blow. It doesn't necessarily take a shit ton to break your ribs either.
Right. Yeah.
From what I understand. I don't know. Dr. Samuel Goldstein, a neuropsychologist, also testified and said that Terry's post-crash trajectory was a, quote, acute rapid downturn. He told the court that without that accident, the life he was living prior to it would still be the life he's living now. He encouraged the jurors to use their common sense rather than get bogged down in questions about the white matter beneath the brain's cortex. Just use whatever you think. Just think about it however you want to think about it,
Okay.
Next, Terry Sanderson took the stand. And first, he spoke about the type of skier he was. He stated that he was an advanced intermediate skier. I would say advanced is more than intermediate, but But there were many places that he wouldn't go. He skied 2 to 3 times a week for over 30 years during the winter season. I'd say that's pretty fucking advanced.
Yeah, and as far as I know, you can't be like, I am super amazing at this, but also I'm pretty good.
Yeah, it was interesting. He had never been in another ski accident besides the one with Gwyneth Paltrow. He learned to ski with family friends who were part of ski patrol and considered himself to be a good skier. So the day of the accident was the first time he skied at Deer Valley, and he was skiing with like a meetup group. So again, Terry was very, very, very active. He was retired at this point, and he was part of a lot of meetup groups. They would go and do volunteer work at different places. They'd go and ski. So he's meeting new people, or I don't know, maybe this is a group he's been a part of for a while, but he's out there. He's getting out there. He's doing stuff, right? The group was advised to stay on the edges of the bandana run, which is a green run, in order to avoid all of the people in the middle of the run. He also agreed that staying on the right side was likely due to his vision issues in his right eye. So here's another issue. Terry Sanderson had vision issues. And I saw an interview with one of the jurors after the trial, and she said, when you have vision issues like he does, where you can't see everything around you like you're supposed to wear a certain colored vest. Like that's kind of one of the rules, so that other skiers know to stay away from you because you can't see them coming around you or whatever like that. He was not wearing that colored vest that day. So he did have deficits that would make him more likely to have trouble skiing.
Right. Or result in an accident because he can't.
Result in an accident. Yeah. So he said he gets off the ski lift. He heads toward the right side of the hill. He looks over the hill. He doesn't see anybody. He said he was making nice, soft turns. He was skiing easy. He's paying attention. All of a sudden, in front of him were 2 big signs that said slow down. So he backed off what he was doing. He sees another slow down sign. He backs off again. He continues on the run. He sees a curve. He said it's wide open, nothing in front of him. He goes around the corner, and he said, and then I heard something I've never heard at a ski resort before, a blood-curdling scream. And then he goes, and I can't even do it. It was like,
Yeah, I was like, then don't try.
Then don't try. And he said that the scream sounded like somebody who was out of control and was like about to hit a tree or something. Might have sounded like the scream I did when I almost died skiing myself.
Yeah.
On a bunny slope. I wasn't even on the green yet. I was on the freaking bunny slope, and I literally almost died and killed everybody in front of me. But he said that's what it sounded like to him. It was like one of those screams that's like, oh shit, something bad is about to happen. I'm going to hit a tree and die, right? After hearing the scream, he says he gets smacked so hard in his back that the fists of the person behind him and their poles were right beneath his shoulder blades. He said all he saw was snow in front of him, but he felt like, which you're on a snowy mountain, so of course. He had no control. And he says, and I was absolutely flying. And Van Orman, his attorney, is like, well, you weren't airborne, though. He's like, well, because he's never given that detail before, right? Like,
right.
He did not fly through the air. He got smacked and hit the ground. And he's like, well, I mean, I was just, I was flying. I had no control. He kept saying the word flying, and she's like, but not airborne flying. Like, she's trying to.
We did not discuss this. Do not add.
We didn't talk about that. Yeah. And he's like, well, I felt like I was flying. And she's like, oh, fine, okay. He says it's quite a way to fall to hit the ground, and he remembers thinking that he had to protect his face. He said at that point, there's no way he could have known who hit him. This person landed on top of him. He also doesn't remember hitting his head. He just said his arms had collapsed. The next thing he remembers is his subconscious telling him to pay attention, that somebody, a man, was really angry at him and was yelling. And he said he tried to move. Now listen, he says he's laying there in the snow and somebody is in his face yelling at him. Craig Ramon says he's face down. He's not. He's face up. Because he says he opens his eyes and Eric Christensen is in his face yelling at him, saying, do you know what you did? You hit her, and like yelling at him. And he says he can't move anything. He's just opening his eyes. He tried to move his legs. He tried to move his arms. Can't move anything. He said then finally his brain was telling him, you need to placate this man. You can't move. You can't do anything. There's nothing stopping this man from jumping on top of you and finishing you off. That's what he said. Finishing you off.
A little dramatic.
A little. And so he said, then I mouthed the words. Van Orman is like, are you trying to say I'm sorry? And he's like, well, yeah, but what I'm saying is like nothing would come out. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I'm trying to say words and nothing would come out. And she's like, okay. And she's like, were you saying I'm sorry because it was your fault? And he's like, no, absolutely not. I'm trying to placate this man who's very angry because I don't know what he's going to do to me. Okay. So I'm saying I'm sorry to try to placate him. All right.
Okay.
So then Craig Ramon comes over there and he's asking Terry if he's okay. He said his ribs were sore and he told Craig that his vision was blurred. He said with sparks, his brain felt like he was on Novocaine and his ears were buzzing. Craig asked if he knew who he was and he did. He asked if he knew where he was. He said, I know I'm skiing, but he said he couldn't remember where. Terry then testified that he realized that he was getting cold, he needed to get up, so he started sliding his skis and legs around. They're moving now. Then a man showed up in front of him and helped him up to his feet. Then the guy took off after helping him up. And again, this is the guy that Craig Ramon said yanked him up, which also, if you're in full snow gear to get my ass back up after I went down, you
Someone
had
to yank you up.
Yeah, you had to pull me up out of the snow. So like, I don't know. But anyway, so they said he yanked.
I feel like it's kind of the equivalent because like I've been snowboarding and I landed just through no fault of my own. It was like whoosh and I'm all the way on the ground in an instant. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of like what you would expect from like a whitewater rafting thing. If you fall in, the guide or whatever is just going to grab your life jacket and just pluck you out and put you right back on.
It's not like you're gently in the grass or whatever. Like you're in the snow. Like when my kids are making Snow Angel, you have to yank them up to get them. Yeah. So they said Eric Christensen just yanks him up, yells at him, skis away. So Terry and Craig tried to ski down. They didn't get very far. So Craig goes to find help. Terry waited there. He ends up being taken down the hill on a toboggan. Whitney from the ski patrol asked him to remember a few things that she would ask him later as a brain test. When asked later and on the stand, he could remember all the things that she had told him. That's going to come into play. Once off the hill, Terry received no medical treatment at the Deer Valley Resort. He did go to Instacare after leaving. Terry learned that it was Gwyneth Paltrow who he had crashed with when the people in his group came to check on him. So Craig Ramon was the person who told him, do you know who you hit? It was Gwyneth Paltrow. He testified that he did not think it was cool that he crashed with a celebrity. Here's the problem with that. So the defense is like, do you think it was cool that you crashed with Gwyneth Paltrow? And he's like, absolutely not. I would never think that's cool. He's like, but you said you thought it was cool, didn't you? And he's like, no.
I don't recall.
I don't recall saying that. He's like, well, you did. And he's like, I don't think I did. And he's like, well, you did. And so he reads part of his deposition because obviously all these people have been deposed before this. And the email comes up. So let's talk about the I'm famous email. So that night after the crash and he gets home, he sends an email to his family members with the subject line, "I'm famous." And then the body says that he had this crash on the mountain, blah, 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 blah. And when asked about it in his deposition, Owens, Gwyneth Paltrow's lawyer, said, "You sent an email saying I'm famous because you thought it was pretty cool. Like, you writing that as your email subject line implies that you thought it was pretty cool that you crashed with a celebrity." And his answer was, "Yeah, I guess so." Okay. The other part of this is at the bottom of Terry's email was a link. From what I understand, this link doesn't go anywhere now. Shay responded to, this is his daughter, responded to the email. They had her read it, her response on the stand. And she needs to get a dramatic reading award because she's like, "Dad, wow, that's so crazy. I can't believe this was all caught on GoPro. What are the chances? I'm so glad you're okay." And I'm paraphrasing, but I know she said, "I'm so glad it was caught on GoPro. What are the chances?" So they ask her, was there GoPro of this event? And apparently Terry was known to wear a GoPro when he skied. He says this day he didn't. But there was a link at the bottom of the email, which they later said was a picture of Whitney. And maybe there was a picture of Whitney, but there were multiple links. So anyway, she says, "How lucky we are that this was caught on GoPro." And so they ask her, "Why did you say that?" Because they said, "Was there GoPro video?" No. "Well, why did you say, 'Thank God it was caught on GoPro'?" She said, "Well, when my dad had called me, before I sent the email, we were talking about it, and I'm just trying to make my dad feel better, obviously. Like, wow, I'm so glad, we'll get to the bottom of this," or something like that. But she said when he called, he said the mountain was really busy that day, and surely somebody had video of it, because surely somebody out there would have been wearing a GoPro. And surely when the blood-curdling scream happened, because Gwyneth was about to hit him, that whoever was wearing the GoPro surely would have turned their head and looked and would have caught the whole thing on video.
And she's
saying, so my response was, "Thank God it was caught on video." And they were like, "Is there video?" "No, it doesn't exist." "Well, then why did you say that?"
Because there was video that did exist.
And it did not help their case.
No.
That is my speculation.
Yes, that's what I think as well.
That is my speculation. So, because she didn't say, "I hope there was video."
Right.
So again, Terry testified that he'd had 4 broken ribs, a concussion, and some right leg anomalies later on. He talks about that he is living a whole different life now, that he can't do anything he did before. Again, he says things like he's a self-imposed, oh my God, I cannot say that word, self-imposed recluse, which that part to me was major, because we'll get to cross-examination of him. He says now he doesn't take risks anymore. He had tried to ski at one point after he was told not to ski because if he had another collision, he could be in a nursing home, all these things. He says now his communication is, quote, upside down and backwards. He says his personality is different. Can't remember things he used to remember. His essence is gone, all of these things.
Not the essence.
Yeah. And one of the tactics that Terry's attorneys used at trial was to try to speak about prior cases of Gwyneth Paltrow being accident prone. And she didn't just try to show that Gwyneth being accident prone would prove that she must have hit Terry because she's fucking clumsy as hell. She was trying to impeach her and say that she was lying under oath. So what she said was, "Are you clumsy, or do you refer to yourself as clumsy," or something like that. And she's like, "Not normally, like I don't think so, like whatever." And she's like, "Aha!" And she's like, "Well, there's a video of you on Jimmy Kimmel like 10 years ago, and you called yourself accident prone. And there's another video of you almost crashing a fucking Vespa or whatever." And so the judge was like, no, that's not going to work here. You cannot use that she said in a media interview one time that she's clumsy around her house as showing that she clearly must have acted in accordance with that clumsiness and skied into somebody else. Like, that's not going to work. Right. She kept trying to catch her in lies like that. Like, they were bizarre. They were such a reach. She spent so much time trying to argue those things in. It was really bizarre. So now we're going to get to Gwyneth Paltrow's testimony. If you do watch anything, I would love for you to watch Van Orman's cross-examination of Gwyneth Paltrow because it's fucking bizarre. She is fangirling the shit out of Gwyneth Paltrow. She's like, oh my God, what were you wearing that day? Like, and they were asking about, like, did you have a helmet on? Did you have the safety gear on? And Gwyneth is like, yeah, absolutely. And she's like, well, I bet you had a really nice ski outfit on, though. I bet it was a lot nicer than what I would have. And then she was like asking her like how tall she was. And she's like, I'm 5'10" or something. And she's like, oh, I die. I like, she didn't say that. But she's, you know, oh, I wish I have to wear these 4-inch heels just to get to 5'5". And Gwyneth is like, they're really lovely heels. And she's like, oh, thank you. Like, it was really weird.
Yeah,
like you're
awkward.
you're opposing counsel here. But one of the things that Gwyneth said about wearing those like goggles and helmet and stuff like that is, one, it's a safety thing, but two, it helps her keep a low profile on the mountain. Well, then later when they're talking about the accident, Van Orman is like, wait, but you said you screamed when you were hit? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, that doesn't sound like keeping a low profile to me. You're just going to scream and draw attention to yourself. And she's like, yeah, okay, well, it just, the stuff that they were trying to impeach her on was just not working for them. And it just looked really bad. So again, we know that Gwyneth was there with her family. She talked about how she did not engage in risky skiing, even with or without her kids there. You know, she was a safe skier, all those things. Van Orman really tried to push home that you must have been watching your son Moses. He must have been doing the mommy, watch me. Don't your kids do that at the pool? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, not by then. I mean, they were with a instructor. They were having a full day lesson. Moses was 9. Apple was 11. They're not in the mommy, watch me stage anymore. Like, and I'm not looking where I'm going, you know? Okay. So Van Orman goes through Gwyneth's deposition and what she had said in regard to the collision. And so Gwyneth confirms she was skiing along at a relatively slow pace when she hears a rustling noise behind her. Then she says 2 skis come from behind her in between her legs and push her legs apart, and then there's a body up against her. She said she froze, she was confused, then she got really upset. And in the deposition, she said for a split second, it went through her mind, like, is this a sexual assault? You know, because her legs were being spread apart. She just didn't know. And then there was somebody pushing into her back, like it was somebody's whole body, essentially, pushing into her back. She just didn't know. And she said it was just a quick thought that went through her head. And then, you know, because she's trying to piece together what's happening, she can't see it. She clarified that she did not actually believe it was sexual assault. Now, hearing that Gwyneth thought it was a sexual, or possibly for a split second thought it was a sexual assault, Van Orman is like, how about you come down here and let's reenact it so I can really get a feel for what you're saying happened. Gwyneth's attorney was like, ooh, let's see. No, I don't think we need to do that. And the judge is like, absolutely not. You're not going to have her come down. We're not reenacting things. Like, you can move around if you feel like you need to move around, but no. She's like, okay, so I guess I'll just reenact both parts. And it's like, give it the up. You're not getting anywhere with this. Like, whatever. So after they collided, they continued skiing down the hill because there's momentum, right? They go to the right and then they crash. And when they landed, Gwyneth fell on top of Terry backwards, right? That would indicate that Terry is behind her.
Right.
Their legs are tangled up. She says they're like almost spooning, like the way they land. So then she's able to get up and move away. After they hit the ground, Gwyneth testifies that she remembers asking him, what are you doing? And then he said, you skied into my back. And she said, you skied into my fucking back. And then she said that Terry apologized a couple times while he was still on the ground. Then Eric Christensen comes over, helped Terry up, asked him if he was okay. And he said he was. And then Gwyneth said she's still near them, but Eric says, I've got paperwork to fill out now. I'll handle it. Like, we don't need you here anymore. So she leaves. Gwyneth agrees. Eric did not see the collision because Van Orman kept trying to do this too. She's like, well, you don't have any eyewitnesses of the actual event. And she's like, no, but Eric Christensen saw immediately after, and he saw both of us laying there and me on top of him. Like, he saw how we were landed. And I wanted to be like, you don't either. You have Craig. All you have is Craig Ramone, who may or may not have seen it because he said both ways now.
Right.
Like, his testimony is completely not discredited at this point. Like,
yeah,
it was weird. Anyway, everything she did was weird. And also, Craig Ramone is colorblind. He was more than 50 feet away, and he keeps changing his story. Gwyneth testified that she did not learn about Terry's injuries, like the broken ribs and all that, until the court proceedings. She said, no, I didn't ask how Terry was that day or the subsequent days after. And Van Orman really tried to bring that home. And Gwyneth was like, when you're the victim of a crash, you're not really concerned about how the other person is doing. You're just not asking that question. So she skis down the hill after the incident. They have lunch all together because they were already skiing down for lunch when it happened. So they all go to have lunch. She said her knee and her back were bothering her. So she was like, I'm not going to go back and ski. And then she goes and gets a massage. She did not need medical treatment, she said, but she was definitely sore. She did say that she thought the suit was unfair. When asked about her countersue of $1 in symbolic damages, she said it was symbolic because the damages would actually be a lot more, right? She lost a half a day of skiing, which would be more than $1. The next thing that Van Orman tries to impeach her on is absolutely bizarre. She says, you did the $1 symbolic thing because of Taylor Swift, right? Because of her countersue of $1 in her sexual assault case. And that's another case I'd love to cover at some time because Taylor Swift was iconic in this. Gwyneth was like, at the time, I did not know about that. And they talked about it in the deposition, I guess. And Van Orman is like, well, in your deposition, you said that you didn't know about Taylor Swift's lawsuit. And she's like, I didn't know about it then. I have since learned about it, but I didn't know about it then. And she's like, aren't you and Taylor Swift good friends, though? How would you not know about her lawsuit? And she's like, I wouldn't say we're good friends. We're friendly. I've taken my daughter to her concert before. But no, I don't know her very well. We don't talk often, anything like that. She's trying to get in that Gwyneth, one year for Christmas, sent Taylor Swift apparently a vibrator from Goop for Christmas. She's trying to get that in, I think, for a couple reasons. One, because it's Park City, Utah, and it's typically more conservative there. So I think she's hoping the jury is not going to look kindly on vibrators. But apparently the real story of that was Goop did a series of ads at Christmas that year. And their ad for this one was Gwyneth picking out something to send to people. And so she did one where she's like holding a red scarf to send to Taylor because All Too Well, the song, or sure, one of the vibrators or whatever. And she ends up like dropping the vibrator in the bag and, being like, whatever. It's an ad. I don't know that Taylor Swift actually got that. Like, I don't know. She could have, I don't know. But also, if your company makes vibrators, you probably got like 100,000 of them laying around and you give them out to everybody. Like, I don't know. But she was trying to get that in to prove that Gwyneth had lied at the deposition, that she knew about the countersue, as if Taylor Swift invented countersuing for $1, by the way. And it was bizarre and it did not work, and they didn't let that in either. Gwyneth was also asked about asking for attorney's fees, and she's like, I don't get those fees, because Van Orman is like, well, you want it to look like you're asking for $1, but you're really asking for a lot more. And she's like, I don't get that money. My attorneys get that money. I've had to pay these attorneys. They would be the ones to get the money. And she testified that she felt sorry for Terry and all the troubles that he'd been going through, but she did not cause the accident. And Terry on the stand says to Gwyneth's lawyer, he actually says, they asked him something about a sentence that he said or something like that. And he's like, well, you said that. And he's like, no, I didn't say that. Well, they're your words. It's in the deposition. It's your words. He's like, the other personality inhabiting my body said that. And then he says, I'm a different person now. I'm not who I used to be, whatever. And the lawyer says, and you blame Gwyneth Paltrow for that. And he goes, yes, I absolutely do. There was also a text that afternoon where Gwyneth sends to Eric Christensen because he's asking where she is, if she's going to come back up from skiing. And she says, when I got hit, that guy kind of hurt me. I'm not going to ski anymore today. So that also lends credence to her story. You know what I mean?
It sounds like he hit her in her text message that she's implying that's what happened.
Exactly. They did have a doctor who specializes in like traumatic brain injury and stuff like that testify. And she said, I thought her testimony was really, really important because she said, here are the things that we look for after a concussion or whatever. And she reviewed all of his MRIs and all that stuff. And she said, at best, it was a mild concussion. Okay. There's no evidence of post-traumatic brain injury. She said that if he had a concussion, it was very mild. And the reasons for that are because directly after the incident, he did receive the ski patrol came and checked him out. They had the medical, like emergency response team or whatever, check him out. That Whitney girl that he enjoyed so much. She was asking him the questions to make sure that he wasn't experiencing any signs of confusion and all that. I mean, they let him drive himself home. He clearly wasn't experiencing those things. He wasn't dizzy. He wasn't having nausea. He wasn't vomiting, like all the things that you might expect. He didn't have any of those things. And then he continued to go for checks to see physicians who were checking his brain function. And he was getting reports of like exceptional brain function, exceptional memory, except like when they're testing all of these things, he's not having those particular issues. The most damning testimony was when they go through his Facebook pictures. Terry Sanderson's a Facebooker, okay? And remember, he said he's a recluse. He can't do anything he used to do anymore. He's in his house. He's basically homebound, all these things. They went through, I mean, tons of trips that he took.
He is such a traveler. Such a traveler.
Thailand, the Netherlands 3 times. He's in whitewater rafting. He's ziplining in Costa Rica. This is all post-incident. And he just kept kind of explaining those away. Oh, well, yeah, but somebody was with me. Oh, well, yeah, but, oh, well, it just like...
Well, and they also said, like, you can see on his face, his smile is just not the same after.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to laugh, but, like, come on.
Right.
You can't say that she caused your life stopped that day. Maybe you don't do all the same stuff you did before, but there's also evidence that was beginning to happen before this happened, Right. Like,
and it's not like you were struck down in your prime. You're 76. Like,
yeah, exactly. So she ends up winning. They found him 100% at fault. They found that the evidence matched Gwyneth's story that he hit her. And that's all there was to it. They were just like, that's just, the facts are the facts, and they were all on the same page with that. As Gwyneth was leaving the courtroom that day that they awarded that, so she got her dollar and her attorney's fees, she leans over to him and says, I wish you well. And he said, thank you, dear. And after the trial, they do the press conference outside and they're like, was it worth it, Terry? And he's like, absolutely not. No, it was not worth it. Like, he's like, my daughters were exposed to the internet. I'm going to be on the internet forever. It wasn't worth it. And Gwyneth Paltrow was just like, I felt like it was a false claim and I didn't think that I should buckle under that, basically. According to an article on theguardian.com, Robert Sykes, Terry's attorney, made a statement shortly after the trial ended that they were exploring their remaining legal options, which, guys, give it up. Those options included potentially asking a higher Utah state court to consider overturning the verdict. Sykes also stated that Terry Sanderson asked the public to respect his privacy as he determined how he was going to move forward. And then, in April of 2023, Gwyneth Paltrow waived Terry's liability to pay her legal fees. And in response, he agreed not to appeal. So she said, listen, I will eat the attorney's fees, which I can't even imagine how expensive those were.
I know, but I mean,
drop it.
She's got it.
Exactly. She's got it. So that's it.
It's just, what a wild ride.
I know. I know. And I'm telling you, it is I will probably still watch more of this trial. We're done with the case and it's just that interesting to me.
That is so funny. Yeah, you do. You just love some trial footage.
I do.
But yeah, it's wild to me because I remember hearing about this and I was like, I think he just wants money from her. Because what are the odds? You feel like if somebody runs over your foot and it happens to be a billionaire, you're like, well, yeah, I'm gonna, maybe, yeah. I don't know, but
yeah. it just does not.
It felt like that.
Well, yeah, and when you look at all of the evidence that just says it didn't happen that way, the jury didn't think that Terry was necessarily lying. They thought that he really believed that that's how it happened, and maybe he did kind of, whoop. And then in his mind, he said, this is what happened. I mean, the evidence just kind of points towards that she was downhill, he was uphill. He skied into her. I mean, the way they landed, all the things. And just the changing stories from him and Craig Ramone. And he would be like, well, it happened this way. And then he would be like, but I was out for 10 minutes. Well, then how could you know?
It's bizarre to me, too, that it went all the way to a jury trial.
Yeah,
it's a little collision.
Mm-hmm.
And, Gwyneth obviously did not want it to go to trial, but
no, I think his lawyers probably were like, well, she'll just settle to get it over with. And she didn't.
Good for her, though.
But that's it.
That's it. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We love you, and we will catch you next episode.
Bye.
Bye.